puts Moment of Creation on the bottom here. It's not
You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
And here we are. We've made it after 7 rounds in this third weekly. We're now in the top 8. I am Sir Rhino. I'm going to run down the top 8 real quick, and then LocoPojo will help me break down all the feature matches for the rest of the day. So we've got Danny Boer at 7-0 on Akaria Blue. Danny Boer is now, I believe, I was told 15-2 with this list
impressive.
over the past 2 weeks. That's pretty insane. Lenny Vine 6-1 on Xenon mid-range. Croge 6-1 on Argenport mid-range. Mr. No Time Man 6-1. It says Argenport mid here, but it's actually Argenport control. So we've got, I believe, a few different decks here. And then Mr. Bombito 6-1 on Praxis mid-range. Jade Phoenix 5-2 on Firetime Justice mid-range, and Muxox the other 5-2, making it on Felnscar control. We're also that's 7 names there, so we've got an 8th that snuck in, and that'll be Second Blue, which will be in this feature match at 6-1 on Grenadins. And actually, while we're talking about Grenadins and Second Blue and Mr. No Time Man and mistakes, we're gonna go in and look at this feature match. It's Second Blue on Grenadins, Mr. No Time Man on Argenport control, and here to help me break it all down is LocoPojo.
Yeah, we've got a pretty solid matchup here. This Tabrod Auric Broker deck has made it into the top 8. Fascinating surprises here. We got Devastating Setback and Harsh Roll to keep things under control with Auric Runehammer and a big pile of removal. There's basically no weapon, no units up till 5, at which point you're playing out Throne Warden and Tabrod and just setting up for those Sword of the Sky Kings later on in the game.
Yeah, just the casual 4 sort of the Sky Kings at the top end of this Argenport control list, and is ready to handle these Grenadins that are good at reloading. Looks like the match is underway, but 4 Devastating Setback, 4 Harshal from this Argenport control list, 4 Sabotage. They might be able to handle this onslaught of Grenadins that Second Blue's bringing.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild time. You've got the Grenadin deck is definitely just running a really solid late game with Gear Cruncher and a bunch of other stuff there. I think that's going to be pretty solid if he can get up to it. But I don't know. It's hard to say that Argenport can win against these types of decks just because Tabrod doesn't do too well against those two.
Yeah, Tabrod and Throne Warden aren't at their best here, but the amount of disruption this Argenport deck has isn't to be underestimated. For now, it's just the lone Grenadin drone. His partner in crime got Varus favored away. And Second Blue's got the cards you want to have against control. Your Devourer, your Scrapper, your Gear Cruncher. Just looking to find a few more Grenadins so that when this next Cruncher comes down, he can really reload the board.
Yeah, it's a pretty nuts time. We've got... there's not much going on here for Mr. No Time Man. I've actually got a visual bug where Grenadin is just sort of hovering on my screen. But yeah, Vara's Favor is... probably the best option there, and beyond that, looks like he's not going to be able to do a whole lot here.
Ooh, the draw for this turn is another copy of Devastating Setback for Mr. No Time Man. He's got to decide if he wants to save that just as sweepers, but opts to go for 1 to the hand, and it whiffs. Second Blue had no spells in hand, just a bunch of power, a Scrapper, and a Cruncher. So that's 1 Devastating Setback down for Second Blue.
Yeah, he's got Devastating... Mr. No Time Man has Devastating Setback to push some cards out of Second Blue's hand if he needs them, but he's probably going to save that to just kill Grenadin. That's usually the best use of the card in this matchup.
Well, now that the first one whiffed, I think we'll definitely see him just hold on to the second one for a while till a more critical juncture. But Second Blue uses Quarry, finds some Grenadins, plays a power, which makes another Grenadin, and hey, he's got the board kind of filled up again. At least set up for this Scrapper to come down.
Yeah, it should be fairly solid. Sunscar Scrapper coming down is going to allow him to basically just draw up 2 more cards, get a couple of Grenadin into his Void for Gear Crunchers later, and start stabilizing on power and moving forward on like actually getting the game sealed up.
Yeah, so Mr. No Time Man is going to waste no time killing that Stone Scar Scrapper. Cannot let that live for much longer, as it will just bury you in card advantage. but it got the job done. It put a few more Grenadin in the void, drew another Gear Cruncher. So we always talk about how it's not the first Gear Cruncher that kills you. It's generally the second one. Although with the hand that Mr. No Time Man has, he might be able to handle both of them.
Yep, might need a third. Granite Waystone putting a Grenadin down on the board. Second Blue sitting pretty happy at 29 life. Mr. No Time Man can actually start applying pressure, but until he gets up to 8, he's not really generating threats that the Grenadin deck is going to care about.
Yeah, I think we might see a Runehammer come out here. It'll have 5 health attached to it, or armor attached to it, which is a pretty good spot for a Runehammer to be at against this Grenadin deck. It means you'll have a good shot at it taking down a lot of units.
Yep, the more threats and the more like unique, valuable threats that Mr. No Time Man can generate, the better off he's going to be against the Grenadin deck. It's not very good at dealing with essentially like lots of big single target units. So if you can really develop the board, then that tends to work out pretty well until the Gear Crunchers.
Yeah, Mr. No Time Man, maybe not anticipating this Grenadin chump blocking here, but if you're second blue, there's no reason not to. You're going to get it back once you play one of these Gear Crunchers. The draw for turn is Annihilate, which has no targets other than Throne Warden in this matchup. The only other unit that Mr. No Time Man plays is Tavrod, and Tavrod is multi-faction.
So there's Gear Cruncher number 1. That's 6 Grenadin in hand, and Mr. No Time Man can pretty easily set back this if he wants to, or he can just knock out the card with an Auric Runehammer and feel pretty happy about that result. Neither option really gives him like a huge advantage because he either leaves the Gear Cruncher alive and allows it to potentially shoot him later, or he, just knocks down this Auric Runehammer and loses all of the armor on it.
Yeah, the setbacks is only sweeper left in hand, so it is rather valuable. Again, you have to think about how you're going to deal with the second Gear Cruncher, as we were talking about. And so, yeah, we'll just see the hammer come down instead, take out the body, and he'll assume a kind of defensive position here.
I like this route, deal with the Gear Cruncher first, and then set back later when you need to.
Yeah, the other notable thing is when you do cast this setback, if you still have this Throne Warden in play, it's going to shrink down to a lowly 2/2, and your clock that you were relying on will diminish quite a bit. Second blue just misclicked as he torched his face.
I've been seeing a lot of that today. It's
yeah,
a fairly common and fairly unusual thing to do. It's not easy. It's not like Hearthstone easy where you can just like click on the wrong thing. But every once in a while, if you're playing a little too fast,
it
can happen.
So, misplays happen. It's a bummer. The key is to not let it get you down. Keep playing the game and pretend that it didn't happen, right? So yeah, I imagine second blue was going to try and torch and then annihilate the Throne Warden. As we talked about, annihilate really can only hit Throne Warden. But unfortunately, that best laid plans sometimes go awry, and instead he'll just have to rely on Grenadin beatdown while his Throne Warden's still in play.
Just as planned, establishing dominance, that kind of thing. So Auric Runehammer doesn't do a lot of good here. Devastating Setback is really tempting, but I'm not sure if Mr. No Time Man actually wants to push it. It's just not really highly impactful to knock out a couple of Grenadin with a Gear Cruncher still on board. Extract here would be fairly nice. He gets that lifesteal, he gets to scout for power. Both of those things are pretty important to him since he really wants to be playing these sort of the Sky Kings eventually.
Yeah, this is a tough spot for No Time Man, though. You've got a handful of spot removal. You only have one sweeper, and if you use it here, second blue's threatening to just totally reload, and instead is just going with no play. I think I would have liked something like Extract, as you mentioned, just kind of attempt to manage the board. It's not like Extract is super valuable in this matchup.
Yeah, we see the block there, and certainly a decent amount of damage has been dealt. I'd really like Mr. No Time Man to be extracting at some point, but it's hard to say exactly when that's going to be appropriate.
Another Runehammer is the draw here. You got to get those out of hand at some point as well. I mean, you've got double Sword of the Sky King. Again, your opponent's good single target removal targets are what, a 4/6, a Scrap Tank, and Gear Cruncher. Outside of that, it's just a pile of Grenadins. Yeah, it feels bad, but you got to play the hand you're dealt in the deck that you ran with. Oh, wow. Madness is the draw here for second blue, but it's not like your opponent has 2 units so you can set up something crazy with that.
He's almost never even going to play one. Like, you can certainly Madness Tavrod, which is kind of nice, but also just mills you since you don't have any weapons or Minotaurs in your deck. So he'll see if he can set something up, and might actually be able to knock some health off of a weapon at some point.
That's an interesting sequence there, right? The initial Annihilate swings in, and Mr. No Time Man doesn't block because he doesn't want his Throne Warden to die to Torch, which, hey, Second Blue just drew off the top here. But now Mr. No Time Man's committed a second unit to the board. Second Blue can do the Madness Combust sort of play here with this Torch as the draw, too.
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. We see the block there, and so the Grenadin are slowly just thinning out. Second Blue being very, very cautious with his Gear Crunchers.
Not anymore.
Going for it.
Gear Cruncher comes down, and we'll see it get activated and kill off one of the Throne Wardens.
Yeah, that's a rough sell. I think at this point, Mr. No Time Man has to Devastating Setback. The Gear Cruncher could still do some things, but he's got the second setback. That was a perfect top deck for him. Yeah. And he'll be pretty well set against the third Gear Cruncher even.
Yeah, and Mr. No Time Man is in a pretty good position. 17 health, still has 2 Sword of the Sky Kings, another Devastating Setback. It's going to be tough for Second Blue to close this one out.
Yeah, the Gear Cruncher knocks the Aegis off the Throne Warden, which is helpful, but at this point, No Time Man's slowly getting closer to 8, and Second Blue starting to run out of gas. This deck does just have 4 Sword of the Sky Kings in it, so it's pretty comfy just sort of sitting still for a while.
Yep, Vanquish is the card on top for Mr. No Time Man after using the Scout. That's going to quickly go to the bottom of the deck. No need for that. You already have a Slay in hand to deal with something like a Scrapper if it shows up. But instead, Second Blue's draw for turn is just a Vara's Favor.
Yeah, at this point, I think Mr. No Time Man is pretty heavily in the lead. With the Sword of the Sky Kings, he's going to start slowly just chipping through. He's got setback for at least one more Gear Cruncher. He's set up so well against the current board that it's hard to see him losing to anything other than, like, card death.
I think Second Blue is a little too eager to throw away a Grenadin there. I'd much rather have 2 units on board and just use the Torch, but he opted to use Vara's Favor as removal instead at the cost of losing a Grenadin. Mr. No Time Man finds a Sabotage and has his pick of the litter and will take out the Combust.
Pretty solid. There was a Madness in his hand, right? So he's still got the Madness available. That's a pretty devastating card, but certainly not going to be applying to anything on Mr. No Time Man's side of the board yet.
Yeah, and Mr. No Time Man still has another Devastating Setback, so if he gets to a spot where he is worried about that Madness, he can just take it out. Instead, the draw for Second Blue is a Devour, and now, again, he has no Grenadins left because he gave up one last turn, and then that's the risk you took. You valued Torch over a Grenadin, and it might not have been the right call.
Emerald Waystone making 8-9 Sword of the Sky King with No Time Man finally at 8. That's going to really help him out. He's putting Second Blue on a 3-turn clock, forcing him to play out assembly lines and other things. And then from there, he can actually use setback to get through if he needs to, or he can just kill these Grenadin. That's not a particularly big deal for him.
Yeah, setback and harsh rule in hand for Mr. No Time Man. So he'll have a pretty easy go of it, keeping this board cleared. And again, 2 Gear Crunchers are already down from Second Blue. So he only has so many cards that can reload this board left.
Yep. So he did get the assembly line did get the devastating setback, which is pretty important since you need to have a distinct answer for both Gear Crunchers, and harsh rule or setback are definitely the ones there. But Second Blue is not able to reload his hand here, so he's going to go down.
Yep. So Mr. No Time will take that first game. This is a best of 5 now. We're in the top 8, so no sideboarding just yet. They've got to run it back for game 2, and then we get to sideboarding after that. So hopefully the players remember that. It looks like Second Blue is looking to sideboard. We'll have to quickly jump in and remind him. He's been in the top 8 before, but it's not something you do every day.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're getting that corrected, and then we'll get back into game 2, which will, normally Grenadin are able to outgrind most control decks, but when a control deck's bringing 8 board sweepers like this Argent Port deck does, it can kind of keep up with the deluge of little tinkers.
Can be pretty meaningful if you can get just a pile of stuff out. I think the Grenin deck's primary weakness is that it's not terribly reliable at getting to that late game. While the Gear Crunchers do present a lot of unique threats, if you are not really drawing enough cards, then it can be pretty tricky. And Gear Cruncher is just kind of the card that carries the deck. If you've got good answers to the Gear Cruncher, then from there, it's pretty hard for the deck to win against the sort of no unit control decks.
Yeah, generally Grenadins feast on other mid-range decks, right? Your Madness and Combust combos and things like that are very strong against that. Against control, you sometimes need a little more than just Scrapper, Gear Cruncher, and Scrap Tank. And we see Second Blue has that in the sideboard. Scrap Heap and Flamestoker are pretty strong cards if they don't get sabotaged out of your hand.
Flamestoker in particular is especially nice as a top deck. It's just really good against control decks that are just dirtily and not quite capable of getting to what they need.
Yeah, it's generally very strong against any deck playing Harsh War. Hard card to interact with and get it into play. All right.
You could always answer it in Huru with Vision of Austerity. That's the card.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Vision of Austerity is sometimes a necessary evil. It's with how much Auric Runehammer and things are seeing play right now, it's certainly not an unreasonable play. Out of Argenport, you don't have that. Once a Relic's in play, it is in play. So if you're Argenport, you've got to hope to rip it out of hand. But it looks like game 2 is underway now. Again, no sideboarding yet, even though we were talking about it a little bit there. They've got to play with their mech unaltered.
Yeah, so should be pretty crazy stuff. We will see exactly what ends up happening here. Mr. No Time Man has access to Privilege of Rank. That's a really important card here because it gets him up to that 8 power a lot faster, and he's certainly looking to do that. Sword of the Sky King was a very key card for him that game.
Yeah, there's a reason why he plays 4 of them. He wants to finish the game with that while backing it up with a lot of removal and sweepers, and it's a really cool strategy that's working out well. And we'll see how it functions in this game too, as Second Blue, again, really Grenadin / Threat Light. A Combustion Cell, a Devour, okay, these are fine, but not really, especially Combustion Cell, not its best against control.
Mr. No Time Man scried up a devastating setback there. That's a really important card for him, so of course he's going to keep it. And he's got Sabotage to try and pull some power or Devours out of Second Blue's deck, so pretty good options there.
Yeah, Mr. No Time Man could have Saboed there to maybe preemptively take something like an assembly line that could have come out from Second Blue on turn 3, but opting to hold on to the Sabo at least for now.
Yeah, I don't love that play just because Devour and Torch are both fast spells. So if you get a unit down and then you go for the Sabo and they just Devour in response, that's another way that you could actually lose some card advantage. But it works out pretty well.
Yeah, assuming the Devour doesn't replace itself with another spell in those 2 draws. Yep. Anyways, a Devour's gone. Second Blue draws another one. That's not really what he's looking for here. Already had a Scrapper and a Furnace in hand, but Throne Warden comes down from Mr. No Time Man, and as an Aegis, that's really annoying for Second Blue, who just plays out a Scrap Tank.
Yeah, Scrap Tank is a very powerful card for him here. Like, it's just one of the harder cards for Mr. No Time Man to deal with. You have to have Vanquish for it, basically, or really active Sword of the Sky King.
Yep, it's out of Runehammer range thanks to that Combustion Cell, and Second Blue gets to hold up Devour as well here.
Yeah, he does have it if he can Vara's Runehammer, but Devour will stop that.
Right. Vara's Favor on Scrap Tank, play the power, Runehammer, the Scrap Tank, and then you just Devour the Grenadin and the Scrap Tank grows. So Mr. No Time Man has to be wary of that line, but does he have anything better to do is the question.
This is a handy trick here with this Combustion Cell, where he's essentially got the extra 2 power, which is over his limit, but he gets to keep it over to the next turn, which is good interactions.
Yeah. This is a really tough position for Mr. No Time Man with the way his hand is lining up here. It's like you can't maybe swing with Throne Warden first. Yeah, that's what we're seeing. If so, either Second Blue will block with the Grenadin, block with the Scrap Tank, or maybe not block at all. And once you see what happens, you can decide what to do. Yeah, no blocks from second blue. I like that line of play. Don't give up any bodies when you're really late on them. And just a pass from Mr. No Time Man.
He sees it, and he's pretty confident that he's not going to get the Auric Runehammer Vara's play, so he just opts to pass.
Yeah, the draw here is Crimson Firemaul for second blue. Not at its best in this matchup. He's using that tech for maybe some other flyer-heavy decks, but against control, it's just a removable magnet for all these hammers and annihilates and slays and whatever that's sitting in the Argenport control player's hand.
Yeah, he's somewhat okay with monopolizing Mr. No Time Man's removal, though. Like, as long as he's got No Time Man reacting to cards, he's just building a bigger scrap heap every time, so it's a pretty big deal that way.
Yeah, the Firemaul doesn't line up great against Runehammer, but it gets the Runehammer out of hand at the very least. But instead, just opting to maintain the status quo. Both players have plenty of power, and both of their turns have been attack, pass.
Yeah, 4 and 6 on either side. Mr. No Time Man's a little bit ahead because he's got the sort of aggression here, but if this continues to be a brawl, second blue's going to win out on tempo.
Right now, second blue is behind in the race, but drawing Madness there is a pretty nice break, I would say. That can flip the race very quickly.
Yep, and with a Grenadin here to block, that's kind of an issue. Mr. No Time Man now has an Extract, which really doesn't do him a lot of good. He can sort of attack face with it if he needs to, but it's not helping him in getting rid of this scrap tank, and any other target is just kind of awkward.
Yeah, Mr. No Time trying to be patient with this removal, but instead is just keeps drawing more and more of it. And at some point you have to pull the trigger, I would think. It's just a question of when is it, because it's never going to feel good using this removal, especially with second blue every turn holding up this Devour. But as it stands, second blue is winning this race on board. Mr. No Time Man's going to be forced to blink at some point.
Yep. We could see all sorts of weird options. You can kind of devastating setback here, but it doesn't look great because it gets +2/+2 to the scrap tank. So it's not a good trade there. Extract is probably the best option to try and find a slay, but if you're going to do that, you're going to do it to face, and then you can't attack or really defend either. So it's just a very awkward situation.
Yeah. And we're finally going to see the Varus favor into Auric Runehammer line.
Yep.
And I imagine second blue will simply devour one of his Grenadin in play to save the scrap tank.
Should work out just fine. He'll get a 6/6 in response, and 2 cards, which is a pretty good deal.
Yep. 7/6 scrap tank survives this Runehammer. And yeah, it's a good spot for second blue to be, and Mr. No Time Man simply hasn't drawn a Vanquish or a Slay yet to cleanly deal with this scrap tank, and it's given him a headache.
But quite a problem here. So at this point, second blue's pretty well ahead. He's got a lot of cards at the moment. He's got a very scary threat on board that Mr. No Time Man doesn't really have any way to deal with. He's still got a decent defender that's actually kind of forcing him to not trade very well on health. And he's ahead on life, all of which are really, really good signs. But yeah, No Time Man could still pick something up.
Yeah, but Mr. No Time Man's down to 12 now, and second blue has a Madness and 2 torches in hand. That can be maybe a bit more of a burst than what No Time Man would normally expect.
Yeah, Torch Madness torches game.
Yeah, well, that extra power means we could see Extract plus Runehammer here.
Yeah, Extract plus Runehammer would be pretty bad for him. If he plays out his power, I think he's pretty dead. But if he does the Torch Madness torch trick here, then No Time Man just annihilates his own Throne Warden, which is not amazing, but helps.
Yeah, Mr. No Time Man simply passes, does nothing, and second blue uses a torch to pop Aegis, uses the Madness on Throne Warden, and as you said, Mr. No Time Man will have to annihilate, and will choose to do it now before second blue gets it so that second blue can't devour it.
Yeah,
but
that's
now
pretty
coast is
relevant.
clear for this torch to face, a space in, and that looks like Xaxes.
It's a full 9.
Ooh.
The whole 9 yards. All right, so
that's what can happen with this Grenadin's deck. It presents kind of threats when you don't have that clean answer to Scrap Tank and it's doing all these sacrifice effects, you don't know how to use your spot removal. Mr. No Time Man died with a hand full of removal, and that's it's a pretty crazy spot to be in.
Yep, pretty crazy stuff. We finally go into sideboards now, so we'll see each player's up one fight. So there's a potential for this to go a little bit longer and see if they can actually get a bit more interaction with each other in the mix.
Yeah, so out of second blue here, there's 3 sabotages. I expect all of those to come in. It's just your opponent's basically their whole deck is sabotage targets. That's a pretty powerful card to have access to. Scrapheap is pretty interesting as it's not quite on the same level as Flamestoker, but a charging Gear Cruncher that refills your whole board and all of those Grenadins have charge. That sounds like the kind of value I can get behind in this matchup.
Yeah, if you're just dealing 3 damage to the face with Assembly Line, that's pretty good. If you're just playing like Spark Catchers with charge, that's decent. Like everything looks pretty good on aggression.
It makes your opponent's weapons far worse when all of your effectively have charge.
Even an endless source of very expensive Grenadin can be good against Auric Runehammer style decks, or anything that's just trying to kill you with Sword of the Sky King.
Meantime, Mr. No Time Man has very few spells on the sideboard, just 4 Protect and Extract, but a whole lot of units that he has the option of bringing in if he wants to. Grenadins can be weak to flyers, so 2 Valkyrie Enforcer, 4 Mokto could be what the doctor ordered here. But would that end up being too dramatic of a change to your game plan? Because that's what Grenadins generally want to go up against is units that don't have Aegis that they can kind of deal with cleanly with Combust and Madness and things.
Yeah, I'm always worried about bringing in Mokto against a deck with 3 Madness in it, but it's potentially the right call in this situation.
Yeah, it's really a question of next leveling the sideboard, right? Do you anticipate that second blue on Grenadins is like, well, Madness isn't very useful in this matchup. I'm going to take it out. And once they do that, you can then bring in Mokto because he gets quite a bit stronger.
Yeah, it's possible. I feel like Madness is still reasonably useful in this matchup for him. Like, certainly helped out against that Throne Warden in that game. And anytime when your opponent is playing any kind of unit, you can just steal it and feel pretty happy about life. But it really depends.
Yeah, again, when you sideboard, you want to bring in cards, and cards have to come out. And I think it's very possible that second blue identified, Combustion Cell and Madness as the cards.
Well, there is a Combustion Cell in the list, so.
All right. Yeah, there's a Combustion Cell still in hand. I guess just the ability for it to let you power out threats like Flamestoker way ahead of time is still super valuable that you don't want to cut all of them.
It's almost technically part of your power base, and you usually don't want to mess with the power base in sideboard. Sure. So you got the Combustion Cell down, and he just needs tokens for it. Granite Waystone's going to help a little bit with that.
Yep, these Granite Waystones will be turned on in just a couple of turns. And this Sabotage is going to whiff here, as second blue's got a bunch of power and a Gear Cruncher and a Scrapper, much like the old Sabotage that we saw miss too, or that was a devastating setback. And Mr. No Time Man would be stuck on power, but has a privilege of rank, then he's going to curve out just fine here.
In our first Tab Rod of the round, this is like the first one in 3 games. And yeah, it should be a fairly solid card here. Probably get combusted almost immediately, but not bad to play down.
Yeah, and again, Tab Rod's not necessarily at his best in this matchup where Grenadins can actually just use Tab Rod as a wing con in terms of decking out the opponent. Now, this Tab Rod has a lot of Sword of the Sky Kings to hit, so there is that to factor in, but looks like second blue has found some Grenadins to play out here, thanks to both the Waystone and the Grenadin drone draw.
Yeah, so No Time Man can play Auric Broker, or he can play Wanted Poster plus Runehammer and try and like knock some stuff down. I think this is probably the correct play. Gets him to force second blue to actually make some active.
Yep, Horn's getting sharpened, so second blue will play out the Combust while Mr. No Time Man's tapped out. Mr. No Time Man does have Protect to the sideboard. Who knows if they actually came in or not, but giving up a Grenadin to take out the beefy boy over there is a pretty good trade for second blue.
All right, we have 2 Wanted Posters, so double Wanted Poster Runehammer is kind of a fun draw spell.
Yeah, you could do that if you just want to cycle these Wanted Posters out of hand, but it looks like instead just Privilege of Rank will come out, draw some more Justice Sigils out of the deck, keep curving out, and maybe set up Oh, no, there's a wanted poster. Great. I guess you could just put out wanted posters anyways, because what are they going to do? Sacrifice the Grenadin so you draw the cards anyways?
Yeah, I don't think there's any way for second blue to actually silence this guy, so
Yeah.
overall it's just not looking terribly strong.
Yeah, so by doing that there, while, second blue maybe didn't have a Devour or a Torch up, is the best bet for you getting some value out of these wanted posters. Ooh, second blue drew Scrap Heap for this turn, but we might see one of these scrappers come out instead to start churning some cards back into second blue's hand.
Yep, get himself 2 draws. Be pretty careful to avoid the one that actually draws cards or actually gives No Time Man cards back. And yeah, he'll be able to stabilize a little bit with Scrap Heap soon, but Flamestoker's definitely something.
So second blue opts to sacrifice the Grenadin with wanted poster, giving Mr. No Time Man 4 cards, but this will let him get out Scrap Heap before Mr. No Time Man can rip it out of his hand with something like the Devastating Setback.
Yep, not a bad call, and pretty good follow-up for Gear Cruncher. At this point, No Time Man might be tempted to throw Devastating Setback into the fold early, but really, it's just not looking great.
Yep, so Scrapper eats an Annihilate. Tavrod comes down. That's a real efficient turn for Mr. No Time, and we'll see what this quarry finds for second blue here.
Finds a whole lot of nothing. At this point,
Power.
Yeah, at this point, he can either play Scrapper and risk essentially getting blocked, or he can just play a single Grenadin and keep himself alive for a bit.
Yep, that Grenadin has charge, although it won't be attacking anytime soon. And No Time Man almost has the full set of Auric Runehammers available. Also, up to 8 power this turn. We might see a Sword of the Sky King come down.
Yeah, all those Runehammers means he's not going to draw anything off of Tavrod. It's just going to throw cards into his void.
Yeah, Tavrod's just going to find more swords and more Tavrods, which are fine hits. And it looks like we do see Mr. No Time opt to go with the Runehammer rather than the Sword of the Sky King.
Yeah, I think I like that route. I think killing a single unit's just fine here when you've got an Endurance guy set up. And, it's a useful card to be playing when you've got 3 copies of it and you're sure that they're not going to be that useful.
Yeah, there is the risk if you go Sword of the Sky King that they have Madness plus Torch or something like that. Who knows if, again, second blue kept in Madness or not, but no reason to throw out the valuable sword there when you...
Yeah, you also really don't love it when your opponent plays like a really good Scrap Tank turn and Sword of the Sky King is not available. So, gotta get things going.
And Mokto gets thrown into the trash bin there. He's not a weapon. He's not a Minotaur. So the void is where he belongs.
He's Mokto's, right?
Yeah, Mr. No Time Man drew a harsh rule for turn, though. So that's huge. Now you've got Sword of the Sky King. You've got a setback. You've got a harsh rule. You're getting pretty close to setting up the win con you want.
Yep. Knocking out another unit here. He's actually got the Emerald Waystone to get himself the armor to keep Auric Runehammer alive. So looking pretty solid here. Just very slowly trying to churn out with Tavrod. Not really a surprise that his Tavrod's not picking things up. But he's probably due for an actual weapon on his next attack. That would be about where the average would lie.
Yeah, wanted poster the draw for turn here from Mr. No Time Man. No shortage of card draw. And second blue is waiting to play this Gear Cruncher so that I think he'll have 7 Grenadin in play. So you can play Gear Cruncher and activate it with 10 power and kill this Tavrod. I think that's what second blue is trying to set up here. In the meantime, he's at 18 health. He's got some time.
Yep, Tavrod pitches another 5 cards. I think we're now starting to get into the field of being a little bit unlucky, but overall, he's just got a reasonable amount of stuff going on. He doesn't get to use wanted poster here, so he's just basically sitting quite tight. He gets to attack for 4, and that's about it.
Yeah, and I'm looking through this void. So Protect did come in for Mr. No Time Man to pair up with that Mokto. And this is actually the final wanted poster for Mr. No Time Man. The fourth one's in the void. So Sword of the Sky King finally makes its appearance. It's here. It's 8/8. And sabotages the draw for second blue with power.
Yeah, I like this timing. It's good for basically putting your opponent on a clock. You have 8 damage plus another 4 off Runehammer, so all you have to do is Harsh Rule to get yourself out of it. The main problem is that Gear Cruncher does have charge, and that's something that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, so now Gear Cruncher can activate, kill Tavrod, and all of these Grenadin can charge in.
Yep, there's exactly enough. No, there's not
No,
quite
there's
enough
only
to kill
7.
the sword.
And I think we'll see one of these Grenadin get combusted so that he can cast Sabotage here and try and take out a sweeper. It'll be up to him to whether he wants to take Harsh Rule or Setback. I think we'll see Harsh Rule go off them.
Oh yeah, definitely. It not only kills the scrap tank, which is kind of an issue, but it's just a really big deal if you lose the 3/4 off of the Harsh Rule as opposed to 3/4 off the Setback, because then you don't have a blocker for the 8/1.
Yep, but the draw for turn is devastating Setback, so Mr. No Time Man could fire off 2 to fully clear the board of everything if he wants to hit face with this Sky King. And seeing Harsh Rule off the wanted poster makes that decision quite a bit easier.
That's definitely correct. He gets Harsh Rule, Runehammer, and there's basically no response from second blue. I don't think there's any way that second blue can actually counter Harsh Rule into Runehammer here, so putting him down to 4 is just pretty crucial.
The only way would be if he was to play out Scrapper here and sacrifice his own scrap tank to gain life to get out of range. But I don't know if that's exactly an intuitive play here. You'd have to know exactly that your opponent drew another Harsh Rule. You are aware of the Rune Hammers.
Yep, and he doesn't have the Devour here, so he's just going to go ahead and rest up.
Yeah, you would have to swing with your Grenadin here, then play Scrapper, sacrifice one of your Grenadin to sell, and then sacrifice your scrap tank to Scrapper to play around Harsh Rule plus Runehammer here. I would be pretty surprised if second blue does all of that, but we'll see what happens.
Well, he's got enough attack to actually knock that out, so if he draws 2 cards here, I think he is outside of lethal.
And he is going to do that. Wants to play around Harsh Rule. Really, I guess just the 1 combustion cell also takes you out of range. But no, he wants more cards. Recognizes that he just wants to reload as much as possible. Really, really smart play from second blue here. We've seen it several times on camera where he knows the matchups.
Yep, so Sword of the Sky King looks good here and kills the Stone Scar Strapper, leaving him with a pretty solid weapon. He's still in a lot of trouble, but if he finds another big Grenadin pile, then he's probably good. Gear Cruncher is that pile.
Yeah, and potentially another Scrapper to try and gain him more life is more important here. You're still at 7, and you want to try and get out of range of this Sword of the Sky King or Runehammer's killing you, but your Grenadins have charge. You can kill this Sword of the Sky King, so at least you have that going for you.
Yeah, I kind of like this route for the ability to kill the Runehammer, but there is a problem here, which is that his Scrapper can't actually gain...
It can.
Oh, he's got 2 combustion cells. Fair enough.
Yep. So he'll just throw away all these Grenadin and reload the Scrapper. And this is the power of this Scrap Heap. These Grenadin having charge have been huge this game.
Very clever play from second blue. He's definitely doing exactly the right thing to stay alive here in the most frustrating manner possible.
Oh, yeah. This Grenadin deck, every time you think you can count it out, Scrapper brings it back in. It really is the Scrapper plus Gear Cruncher combo. It just is so hard to kill off this deck if they have access to both those cards. And this is sort of the Sky King number 3 that's about to go down here.
Yep, to Gear Cruncher number 3 as well. Might be number 2.
And this is going to crash in for 14 damage, if I count that right. 11 Grenadin plus the Gear Cruncher himself. So this is going to bring No Time Man very, very, very low in health.
The hefty pile. He's got the Harsh Rule, and then he's got Auric Runehammers, but at this point, second blue is drawing so many cards. He's just doing so well with the Devours that he's probably feeling pretty good about life.
Protect the draw here. Not going to do a whole lot for Mr. No Time Man, but at least he doesn't have to worry about maybe Torch on his face. But Harsh Rule comes out, Devour the response. And it feels pretty bad to hammer face here when you know your opponent can just play a charging Grenadin for every turn.
Still gets him down to 8, which is pretty crucial. If second blue decides to go for Flamestoker and no defenders, that's an out. But, another Gear Cruncher just ripped off the top. That'll be game.
Yeah, wow.
Gear Cruncher
excellently done from second blue in this match. The power of Scrap Heap really being shown off in that game. That was not winnable without that card.
That Gear Cruncher was generating a 35 Grenadin.
Yeah. Wow. That
Just
was
a few. Just
that
a
was
couple.
awesome. And that goes back to where they had the foresight to sacrifice a few more Grenadin than you think to with Combustion Cell to get that scrap heap out under the disruption from Mr. No Time Man. Really, really awesome match there.
No, yeah, he looked very, very dead, and he played around his opponent's hand beautifully. Really solid play from second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Mr. No Time Man had a great draw. Like, we saw 3 Sword of the Sky Kings involved, multiple sweepers, and Grenadin's just shrugged it off the back of Gear Crunchers and Scrappers and Devours. Was in hammer range for that one turn, and then after that, just a whole lot of life gain brought him back out.
Pretty rough stuff. So, gonna be considering, I'm guessing, some sideboarding there after that rather vicious drubbing. But I'm not sure if there's much else that can be thrown in to help out. So we should see another game popping up pretty shortly.
Yeah, we saw Mr. No Time Man brought in Protects and Moctos. I think that's an okay plan to be on as far as just get some sort of other threat than just your Tavrod and weapons, because that's a tough go of it.
It's a pretty tricky setup. There's just like a lot of stuff going on there, which can be quite difficult. All right.
Yeah, so we are looking good for this game number 4, right? Second Blue leads the match 2-1. So if he takes this game, he'll take the match. So it's up to Mr. No Time Man to recover here.
Yeah, should be a pretty sweet game. Just go ahead and launch into that as I can. And yeah, we certainly are seeing that the Grenadin deck seems to be a little bit favored in this matchup. But if No Time Man can find enough of an aggressive start, that's really helpful. And just having enough devastating setbacks when Second Blue doesn't pull his Gear Crunchers is also quite good.
Yeah, a pair of Throne Wardens isn't the worst spot to be in. Those are pretty annoying for the Grenadin to deal with, so it can at least get in the way of them beating you down. It may not turn around and win you the game anytime soon, but it'll buy you lots of time. In the meantime, Second Blue has that scrap heap in hand again, and that's going to spell some trouble for Mr. No Time Man, who won't be able to rip it out of his hand before it comes down on this board.
Yep, we see a Privilege of Rank there. No Sabotage in the draw, so that's going to mean Scrap Heap comes down pretty much immediately, and that card's sort of the most important card for Second Blue to have to win the game here. Yeah. The only thing I think that would be slightly better would be Flame Stoker, but both of them represent just a lot of damage to Mr. No Time over time.
Yeah, the key here is that Flame Stoker costs 6, Scrap Heap costs 3, so it can come out before any of these sabotages or devastating setbacks hit you. Sabotage to play for Second Blue here. That'll get responded with a Protect so that Mr. No Time Man can hide this setback and rule and hammer.
Yep, we see Assembly Line there setting up a couple of Grenadin with charge no less. And at this point, Mr. No Time Man's primary responses are Throne Wardens, which is not the greatest thing in the world here.
Yep, Throne Warden though, still a 4/4. It's awkward for Second Blue to deal with this card right now. You've got, Scrap Tank and Combust, but none of them are bigger than this Throne Warden.
Yep, he can play Scrap Tank here if he chooses to, and that'll get him the ability to essentially just walk in with a bunch of damage and knock out the armor. But that also leaves you with a 3/3 Scrap Heap that's not doing a lot. So I actually like this play better, where he generates a Grenadin on defense and then just swings.
Yep, slowly chip away. You've essentially got an unlimited supply of Grenadin. Every Grenadin that dies will eventually come back thanks to your Gear Cruncher. So you just throw them away without any sense of remorse, really.
Yeah, he left one behind as a blocker, but then chose not to block with it. Sure. It still kind of stands in the way, but it was just there to draw removal or draw attachments away.
Now a second Throne Warden comes out from Mr. No Time Man. Now maybe swinging with Grenadins isn't in your best interest, although it will start growing your Scrap Tank, and that's what we see here, right? Some of the Grenadins charge in, a couple get held back, and
this feels pretty bad for second blue since he's going to lose it to an Auric Runehammer, which is just the most common card for Mr. No Time Man to have. That card is not particularly great in this matchup, but it's very good for taking care of that just unset up scrap tank. So from here, Mr. No Time can continue to attack himself. He's still gaining a lot of armor, so he probably feels fairly comfy with that.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. These Throne Wardens, you know, they're just awkward for Grenadins to deal with because they have Aegis. Grenadin decks have trouble against flyers and units with Aegis because you don't really run a lot of ping effects. You don't have Vara's favor in this list, at least second blue doesn't. I've seen some versions with it. So and if you took out your torches, you have even less ways to pop Aegis. So they're just really difficult.
Yep, there's another weapon off the table, and Mr. No Time Man has to know there's no more Grenadin coming because there wasn't a charge Grenadin. So we just see a small scrap generation, and there is a lot of like attack power coming out of second blue, which is kind of nice, but this is all just stalling for the moment.
Yeah, stalling for what is the real question, right? What are you hoping to find here to kind of relieve the pressure of these Throne Wardens? Well,
Yeah.
madness. That's something, I guess.
Yeah, if he kills even one Throne Warden, he can just keep attacking with his scrap heaps every turn, which is totally fine. You're generating a pile of Grenadin, so that works out pretty well. And combined with that and being able to attack with scrap tank, he's actually representing just a huge amount of damage to his opponent.
Yeah, the issue here is that Mr. No Time Man has another protect in hand and some setbacks and harsh rules, but at least all these Grenadin have charge. Like, there's some real burst coming out here. So he'll get in for some good damage here. But second blue's at 17 himself. It's not like these Throne Wardens haven't been doing nothing.
Yep. At this point, though, I mean, Mr. No Time Man can devastating setback to attack in, but then he'll basically just lose 4 attack, and that's not lovely. He gets to kill 2 Grenadin and then slay, and that's not the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah, just slowly trying to chip away at all of these Grenadin that are in the way. But yeah, setback is the play here. Going to face. See what he can rip out. So there's a madness and a combust that he can take. Don't think it. He'll take the madness. That has more potential to burst him down. And
yeah, I think that was the correct play. And then Slay kills the 9/9. So yeah, second blue is running a little bit low, but the scrap heap is still doing just a lot of work for him.
Using those spells in that combination, though, means Protect is down here, and he has a Throne Warden that doesn't have an Aegis up. So this might be where we see the Combust come out. Second blue finds a Flame Stoker. It's reduced in cost. That's a nice pickup.
And, yeah, very, very solid against this list. With the Combust there, that's yet another card knocked down. Mr. No Time Man can't feel that great about setbacking face here, so it's pretty unlikely that you're going to see the Flame Stoker out.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see setback face. Your opponent did quarry, but the last time you set back, you've seen every spell since then. They did take something over a quarry with that quarry, but you'd have to know it's a spell or a relic and not something like a Gear Cruncher. So here we go, Flame Stoker down, and as long as second blue can keep Grenadins in the way of weapons, he's got a real good chance to win this game.
Yeah, with the Flame Stoked, I think he's just representing like an extra 6 damage in units every turn. That's more than No Time Man can really deal with. Sword of the Sky King's not very helpful here. He can hit for 8 and then attack for 4. Not awful, but it's still not good.
Yeah, this Flame Stoker and Scrap Heap sticking is going to cause real problems for Mr. No Time. Especially if second blue just keeps the Grenadin coming so that this Sword of the Sky King can never truly get through to face. But he'll play out the sword anyways, and he might just, I don't know, do you swing in with the Throne Warden? It can't block this Infernus regardless.
Yeah, I think you swing in with the Throne Warden. You're not really looking to be defensive here. You're trying to pressure your opponent out, so...
Yeah, because if you hold back with Warden, I guess that means your Sword of the Sky King doesn't die this turn. That's the upside here, because he would have been able to make another charging Grenadin. Yeah, he's just chump blocking with Throne Warden.
Yep, so we see the chump block there, protects the sword for a little longer. A harsh roll means 8 damage to face. That's, I mean, that's fairly equivalent to just attacking with the Throne Warden, but I understand it.
The thing, though, now you get 8 to the face, but Infernus plus a charging Grenadin kills your sword, and your opponent's at 9, so another sword isn't even lethal. It would have to be sword plus a Vera's Favor or an Extract. But still, second blue is getting low here, but this is going to be Mr. No Time Man gets much lower.
Yeah, that's going to be 11. Oh, it's 10 plus 3, so 13. 18. It's not quite lethal, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, Mr. No Time Man throws out the protect on his face. Why not? He's got to draw basically nothing here, because even if he clears this board, an Infernus plus a charging Grenadin comes the next turn. Throne Warden gains him some health in the form of armor. Devastating Setback clears some of these Grenadin. But there's another Gear Cruncher coming from second blue here as well. This is over.
Yeah, this deck has rendered Mr. No Time Man's entire plan like pretty helpless. There's just not enough control in the world to stop this many Grenadin out of this many different sources. Scrap Heap is doing too much work here, and it's probably going to be game.
Simply put, second blue had the sideboard plan for this matchup ready to go. He knew his main board was maybe not quite where it needed to be against certain versions of control, but those extra Flamestokers, that Scrap Heap out the side, look at this, man. It is just a crazy beatdown.
Yep, and there we go. That seals it up. That's all the games for second blue that he needs.
Really well played by both players. Hats off to Mr. No Time Man to making it into the top 8. But second blue moves on into the top 4 with that clear mastery of the Grenadin's deck, seeing all the lines of play, knowing the matchups, knowing how to sideboard. It was a pleasure to see a player with mastery over the deck.
An excellent showing.
All right, and with that, don't know what the status of the rest of the top 8 is. I don't have the bracket up, so waiting to get word on if there's any. Yeah, all other matches are done, so we're going to take a really short break here, and we'll get back into the top 4 after a short moment.